In late February, as a former prince was driven to a police station, Camilla signed away her one true home. Not a crown property, not a palace handed to her. The one house she bought herself, with her own money, before any of this began. And she moved it the same week the family's oldest scandal finally reached a courtroom door. Honestly, once you line up the dates, you cannot unsee it. This is not a story about a drunken banquet or a secret order or a king reading his own farewell. None of that happened. The real story is quieter, colder, and far more interesting than the version going around. Because everything Camilla holds is borrowed against the rain, the title, the crown, the jewels around her neck, and the rain just showed its first crack. Before we get into the timing and what I think it tells you, stay with me to the end. There is one detail near the close that reframes this whole thing. To understand why a single house in Wiltshire matters this much, you have to go back. Back to the woman who never got to grow old in any house at all. You remember her. If you were alive in the 1990s, you remember exactly where this wound opened. It opened with a tape. Then it opened wider with a televised confession in 1994 when Charles admitted on camera that he had gone back to the woman he loved while he was married to someone else. And the someone else was Diana. Diana answered the only way she could. In November of 1995, she sat in front of a single camera and told the nation there were 3 people in her marriage. The whole country heard it. She was not loud. She was devastating. That is the thing people forget about her. She never had to raise her voice. Then it ended the way you already know. It was August of 1997, a tunnel in Paris and a life that stopped at 36. 2 boys woke up that morning without a mother. If you watched the funeral that September, you remember the silence more than anything. The only sound was hooves on stone and a nation holding its breath. A boy of 15 walked behind his mother's coffin while the whole world watched, and he was not allowed to break. Most children grieve behind a closed door. He grieved on live television. That boy is 43 now. Keep him in mind because almost everything happening in this family right now runs back to him. Here is what I think, and I will say plainly, it is what I think. Diana was never really defeated. She was taken too early to win in her own lifetime. But the people she left behind carry her forward, and the woman who came after her has spent 30 years holding things that were never hers to keep. Borrowed against the rain, every last piece of it. Now look at what the future actually looks like, because this is where the patient part begins. William is not a dramatic man. He does not shout. He does not leak. He works slowly and he forgets nothing. When his grandmother died in September of 2022, the Duchy of Cornwall passed to him by blood the same day automatically. That is roughly £1 billion of land and a centuries-old estate. And it moved to him the instant the old reign ended. Nobody voted, nobody chose. The blood did the choosing. Remember that, because blood is the whole point of this story. And here is the figure with the longest memory in the room, Anne, the Princess Royal. People forget that in the early 1970s, before Andrew Parker Bowles ever married Camilla, Anne was the one seeing him. She knew Camilla's world from the inside, 50 years before any of this reached a crown. She is cold, she is direct, and she has watched this pattern play out longer than anyone alive. I cannot read Anne's mind. No one outside that family can. But she has carried this story from closer than anyone, and she has never once needed to say a word about it. Now watch the small things, because the small things are the whole game. At the first state banquet of this year, in March, for the president of Nigeria, Catherine wore the lover's knot tiara. That was Diana's favourite. It was made for Queen Mary back in 1914, and Diana wore it constantly. And that night, it sat on Catherine's head. Camilla, a few feet away, wore a different tiara, one that had belonged to the late Queen. 2 crowns in one room. One of them was Diana's. Diana's favourite jewel skipped a generation. It went to Catherine, not to her. I am not telling you a palace dresser is sending a coded message. I cannot prove a thing like that, and I will not pretend to. But you are allowed to notice what your own eyes are shown. And what we are shown again and again is the future standing exactly where the present used to stand. Everything she holds is borrowed against the rain. Stay with that, because now it stops being symbols and starts being money. Here is the part most channels rush past, the official line. Buckingham Palace has said the same calm thing for 2 years now. The king is well, the king is working, the king carries on. And on paper, that is true. Charles has been at Ascot. He delivered the king's speech in May. He keeps showing up. But royal reporting depends on access. So read the official line with that in mind. Behind the calm, the picture is harder. The king has been living with cancer since the start of 2024. The reports this spring were blunt. One royal biographer said he had seen Charles almost falling asleep on his feet at events. The papers said it plainly. He's living with cancer. He will live with cancer. That is the honest version. Underneath the press release and inside the family, there is a real disagreement about what to do with that. According to multiple reports this year, William has been urging his father to slow down. Camilla has been urging him to keep going. Strength, presence, stability. That is her instinct. And here is the detail I cannot get past. One source said William has come to believe Camilla is, and I am quoting the reporting, overstepping. That instead of protecting the king, she is reinforcing the idea that he must carry on no matter what. Sit with that for a second. The heir thinks the consort is pushing his sick father too hard. Whether that is fair to Camilla or not, I cannot tell you. But the fact that it is being said at all tells you the ground has already moved, because there was no abdication. Let me be clear, since one of the loudest stories says there was. There has been no announcement, no farewell address, no king saying he can no longer serve. The experts who actually know this family say abdication is unlikely, that Charles intends to serve as long as his body allows. The drama is not a sudden handover. The drama is that the handover is already happening in slow motion, in plain sight, while everyone insists nothing is changing. So if you are Camilla and you can read a room better than anyone, what do? Hold that question, because she answered it. And the answer is the most interesting thing she has done in years. This is where it gets quietly brilliant and quietly cold. For 30 years, there was one place that belonged entirely to Camilla, Ray Mill House in Wiltshire. She bought it in 1996 for around £850,000 with her own money right after her divorce. It was hers, not the Crown's, not a grace and favour loan that vanishes the day the reign ends. Hers. Her daughter held a wedding reception there. She gardened there. She once called gardening, in her own words, the best therapy in the world. That house is the realest thing she owns. And in late February, she moved it quietly. Land registry records show it transferred to her son-in-law and a financier, holding it as trustees for her 2 children, Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles. The papers reported it first. Sources close to her said firmly it was not a sale, just a long-standing family arrangement being formalised. Fine, maybe that is all it is. But honestly, look at the calendar. She made this move in the exact same week the country was watching Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor get driven to a police station. The same week, the oldest, ugliest scandal in this family finally turned into an arrest. That is not nothing. You do not get to call that a coincidence and walk away. So ask yourself why now. There are a few ways to read it, and everyone is colder than the last. Maybe it is exactly what they say. Tidy estate planning, perfectly legal, perfectly dull. Maybe it is tax efficient, sensible, the kind of thing every wealthy family does. Or maybe, and this is the reading I cannot shake, you do not move the one thing that is truly yours when you believe you are going to win. You move it when you have already done the math on losing. She holds the crown's jewels. She owns one house in Wiltshire. And the week the rain cracked, she put a wall around the house. I could be wrong, but you do not fortify what feels safe. You fortify what you are afraid to lose. Make of the timing what you will. Now the resistance, because Camilla is not weak and pretending she is, would be lazy. She is still queen. She is still at every major event. Founders Day, Ascot, the state opening. She has real standing, real allies, and a husband on the throne who, by every account, adores her and protects her. That is genuine power, and it is not gone. If she's encouraging Charles to keep reigning, well, every extra year he reigns is another year she's queen. That is not villainy. That is just the math of her position, and she can read it and read it perfectly. But here is the wall she cannot move, the role itself. A consort's standing belongs to the reign, not to the person. It is borrowed by design from the day it is given. When the reign ends, the consort role ends with it. Nobody has to take it. Nobody has to be cruel. The arrangement was written that way centuries before she was born. Meanwhile, far away in California, the other outsider went quiet. Harry, Diana's lost son. And honestly, this is the part where I still feel something complicated, because his pain is real, whatever you think of the rest. In March, the journalist Tom Bower published a book about the split between the two households. In it, he reports that Harry fears William, once king, could remove the Sussex titles entirely. The book reports it. The Sussexes hit back hard and called the author fixated. I am not going to settle that fight for you. But notice the fear itself. Andrew's fall taught everyone the same lesson. A title that was given can be taken. Nothing is invincible anymore. That is the quiet thread under all of it. Watch what happened to Andrew, and you understand what every borrowed thing in this family is now worth. Which brings us to the reckoning. And the reckoning is real. You do not have to invent a single thing. Andrew, the king's own brother, for decades he seemed untouchable, the late Queen's favourite son. In October of last year, Charles stripped him of his titles, his honours, his style, his home. He is plain Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor now. And in February, on his 66th birthday, police arrested him on suspicion of misconduct in public office. He was the first senior British royal arrested in nearly 400 years. The King's response was 4 words: the law must take its course. He did not defend his brother. He let it happen. Think about what that proves. If the consequences can reach the Queen's favourite son, the man closest to the throne by blood, then no standing in this family is safe just because it has always been there. Andrew is the proof. The borrowed thing got called back in public with the whole world watching. And here is the second thing, the quieter consequence, the one that needs no police at all. The duchy went to William by blood. The tiara Diana loved went to Catherine. The future is not being seized. It is simply arriving on schedule the way it was always going to. Diana's line is rising not because anyone fought for it, but because that is how the blood was always going to run. So here is the twist, and it is the opposite of every dramatic story you have been told. Nobody is going to throw Camilla out of a banquet. No future queen is going to walk her to a side door. There's no secret meeting, no signed order, no farewell address. The truth is far colder than any of that. Nobody has to move against her at all. The rules already did the work a long time ago. She won the marriage, she won the title, she won the crown, and not one piece of it was ever hers to keep. This was never about revenge. Anger burns out. This is just the family quietly remembering the difference between who it belongs to and who it once invited in. Camilla can fortify one house in Wiltshire. She cannot fortify the crown because the crown was only ever on loan. Everything she holds is borrowed against the rain, and what is borrowed in the end always gets called back. Diana did not get to grow old, but the boy who walked behind her coffin is standing exactly where the future is. And the jewel she loved is sitting where it belongs. That is not a defeat that needed a villain. That is just time, doing what Diana never lived to see. So let me ask you, before you go, where were you that August morning in 1997? And when you look at William now, what do you still see of his mother in him? Tell me below. I read every single comment.